Hello, I'm FXToyCat and welcome back to episode of my Minecraft Xbox Update Adventures Let's Play. This is the Let's Play where I'm playing through the various updates that have come out for Minecraft on the Xbox, building stuff, killing stuff, and of course, destroying stuff. And in today's episode, I wanted to actually fix a mistake that I made quite some time ago. One of the projects I did about half a year ago now was this giant mountain up here. You might recall how I flattened it because I wanted it to look like one of those weird, quirky, strange mountains rather than just a normal big mountain in my world. I like what we did to the place. I like the fact that it's perfectly flat. It's a very interesting part of the world, but I made a big mistake here, and although that big mistake is something I have to be slightly vague about, today we're going to be fixing that mistake, and as part of that, we're going to be making some more along the way, or at least trying to avoid making more, because I have a bunch of coal ore right here, and I wanted to do something that I don't think most people ever really do in Minecraft Survival, but maybe they should, question mark, because basically I collect, I usually mine with Silk Touch pickaxes. I just get Silk Touch more than I get Fortune. It's a common thing, so I end up with a lot of coal ore, some of which I keep for certain purposes, and some of which I can, throw in a furnace if I want to turn into coal ore. Fun fact, you totally can smelt coal ore into coal if you want to do it that way. It's one of the most wasteful processes in the game because you're using coal to turn coal into coal, but that's a thing you can technically do. But what we're actually going to do is one of the things that most people don't do, which is use a fortune pickaxe on this stack. So we're going to mine this coal ore, then we're going to use it for torches because my biggest mistake requires a lot of lighting. Again, to be very brief and very specific, a lot of people are very non-specific because, again, there are legal reasons I can't state exactly what my biggest mistake was. In the same way that we fixed this world to make, this church right here was causing some problems. I've got one more problem in this world before I can release it to download on the Minecraft store, which a lot of people have asked and requested for. And that one big last step is I need to make sure that the world has better performance. And one of the big performance issues that I've had, again, I can't clarify that this is necessarily related to me releasing the map, but I can just vaguely imply that maybe there's an issue of this world, and there's an issue of the fact that I have a huge mountain which I just covered with dirt. One of the things that people often see me doing now, one of the mistakes I've known to correct now, is whenever I cover something up, whenever I make dark areas, I always light them up. If there's dark areas below ground, that's just a place where zombies can spawn and zombies can sit there for a really long time. It causes big problems if you leave it, unattended to. And yeah, because of that, I have a lot of mobs that spawn underneath that mountain, and they cause huge performance issues. I've noticed them slightly, like right now. If you've got a really keen eye, you're watching in 60 FPS, you might notice how this isn't really the perfect kind of view, and that's because of that. So yeah, in today's video, we're making a bunch of torches. We're gonna go fix that up, and actually, as well as just making torches, because that's fun by itself, what we can also do is we can make some of Minecraft's biggest mistake itself, the sea lantern. That's right, if you put iron ingots around a torch, you get the sea lantern. This is very much a sea lantern. According to Minecraft, Xbox, and Windows 10, don't ask me why this is called the sea lantern, despite being a very much regular lantern. It's one of those funny things where, like, in a bug fix update, they introduced one of the weirdest bugs to the game, and that bug is they call lanterns sea lanterns. Also, let's make a few more of these just because, I want to get a nice round number off, like these made. So we need a number that's divisible by 8 and 9, which I guess would be 72, right? Did I do that right? I'm not even sure. So there we go. We've got 7 of these left over now. So we make one more of these. We make 2 sea lanterns. Boom, gotten rid of all of that. And now we've got 18 sea lanterns, as well as a ridiculous number of torches. Boom, let's go fix one of my biggest mistakes, because this is the last major step before I can, start to go through the processes of, one day doing something important. Again, I can't directly say that there's a link between what I'm doing here and releasing on the store for non-disclosure reasons, but I can say that I have some serious performance issues resulting from this, and maybe that's a thing that might stop people being able to download my map in the future. There we go. Now that's out of the way. Because in case you're curious, one of the things you might not know, that again, I will be very vague in details for, but one of the things you might not know is that when you, every single, thing that ever releases on any official store is tested very vigorously. Like, especially if it's officially done in any way, every single PlayStation game, for instance, it's tested in a very vigorous manner. Oh, also, you can see literally spiders crawl below this thing. It's a very strange, uncomfortable area. But it's usually tested in some way. Certification testing is what it's usually called, and that's to make sure that it will not just randomly do some stuff. And yeah, there's one of the biggest performance issues you can have. In fact, let me just give this as a tip, because even if you don't intend to make your world downloadable one day, this is something that really might help you, because again, it's generally speaking really important to, oh, should I get rid of the bucket? It's generally speaking quite an important thing to, reduce memory leaks and performance issues and stuff, because because having this mob here doesn't help my world, but it does slow down my performance by 1 or 2%. If you're playing on a high-end PC, of course, it doesn't matter. But if you ever notice frame rate drops, try to consider stuff like this. Try to light up areas that are dark. Try to, you know, like if you've got a huge animal farm, try and deal with stuff like that as you can. That's my big pro tip. Because, yeah, it's one of those things that I started realizing earlier this year, but it was a bit too late. Also, pro tip, always use torches for things that are behind the scenes, or glowstone if you've got a lot of it. The reason we're not going to use too many sea lanterns today is because although they're delightful looking, generally these are much better for when you want someone to see the thing. The sea lantern and the torch, if you look right here, they have pretty much identical you know, ranges. However, the big difference is that when you use a torch, you know, it's very cost unintensive, whereas this costs basically a block of iron to use. So yeah, when you're lighting stuff up, consider the cost, because one of the things that really confuses people about this world is, you know, when you watch a lot of YouTubers, especially the high-end technical YouTubers who wait for every update, they, you know, like there's a focus on making the very best thing that is humanly possible ever, and that's important. Knowing the very best of the best you can make is good. But for most people, you know, like I think 99% of Minecraft players, a thing that isn't really considered is that you have a limited amount of time, and because of that, there are certain resources that are time intensive you don't have a huge amount of. If mining iron takes you a minute to mine each, you know, block up, it's probably a bit less than that, but if it takes you a minute each time, don't waste a minute on something no one's ever gonna see. Placing that sea lantern there, that's a waste. One day if you download this map, you can come see this sea lantern and be like, huh, that was the most wasteful lantern ever, hey, and yeah, useful little thing that now you know. So we're lighting this area up, and it's gonna be kind of fun. And in the meantime, as you all do know, this is you know, the weekly series where I don't just show you what's happening in the Let's Play, but a lot of people like it as like a update kind of vlog thing, like, so what's going on in the world of Toy Cat? And long story short, birthday stuff, am I right? Yeah, this past week has been a pretty, you know, like relaxed one for once. If you don't know, this is the most ridiculous thing that I know it's the sort of thing that is only makes me a hateful person. So if you don't like me for this, that's fine. It's the most ridiculous thing to say. But for July, you know, I fly a lot. It's one of my favorite, like, one of my hobbies, passions is traveling, flying, whatever else. I love planes. I love, you know, I love seeing new places. I love all these sorts of things. And it's very cheap to do from London, and especially from anywhere in Europe. It's a lot cheaper than the rest of the world. Just have to say that right now before I say that, like, yeah, I really love it. So for July, because I've been doing a lot of it this year, I was like, okay, I'm gonna have July be no fly July. In the entire month of July, there's not gonna be any fly, because the months rhyme. I mean, like, if you're gonna do something, you should make it rhyme, because that's just how humans work. If something rhymes, it seems a lot better than if it doesn't. Like, oh, so you should torch up areas that are dark? That's not very nice. Torch up areas that are dark, and you won't die like the Starks. Spoiler alert for Game of Thrones, I guess. Or maybe for Endgame as well. Oh, it's a double spoiler, and me saying that it's a spoiler spoiled it when it wasn't before a spoiler. But fun fact, if your name is Stark, you're probably gonna die. Is the lesson from TV and I guess from entertainment media in 2019. But no, besides spoiling major franchises that you should have watched by now, one of the things that I've been up to this past week is you know, really playing a lot of Minecraft. Like I say some weeks, like, oh yeah, some weeks I put, like, you know, only 3 or 4 hours you know, over the whole week into this Let's Play, something like that. And some weeks it's a lot more. This has been one of those weeks. I've been really enjoying that Minecraft podcast together kind of experience, so that's been kind of fun. And again, it's one of those things. I always have to clarify every time it comes up, like, man, it's so good. Like, you know, Minecraft is a game which has a lot of sometimes mundane tasks, so you mix it with something that doesn't have mundane tasks, boom. But yeah, so that's a thing that is a thing. And another thing that is a thing is over the past week, I've been really embroiled in, like, kind of a back and forth by offending a small portion of very, you know, again, I've been saying okay, a lot of things I say as like, well, this is true, but a lot of people don't like that you say it. There's kind of a set of social rules that people usually follow, and it's fun to follow those rules sometimes, don't get me wrong. But every now and then it's like, you know, why is this a thing? So one of the things I said this past week was that having, you know, like my, a cousin of mine that I haven't met in years, they had a child, and I said it's like a hobby that you force everyone else to be interested in. Like, again, I was being hyperbolic, obviously. That offended a lot of people, and then I, like, kind of doubled down, and I said, you know, I said it again in a live stream, and that also caused some offense. So I just wanted to say right now, like, okay, you know, I clearly very good at doing this, but I want to triple down on my stance. I think, again, I think it's probably the most intensive hobby. It's a very good hobby to have, but having children is like, it's a high-end hobby. You know, it's expensive, like some hobbies are. It's time-consuming, like some hobbies are. Admittedly, you create a life, so it's kind of like its own own category of hobby maybe, but I would argue, I'm going to triple down on my previous opinion, that it kind of is. And now that we've, established that, now that's out of the way. By the way, this used to be like a hole in the mountain. We covered it up. I know, things are strange in this world. Try not to think about it too much. Although actually, there's some coal here. Let's mine that so we have some more torches for next time. There's a lot of torches always needed in this world, because I used to just not light areas up like this would be a waste of torches, but the truth is, again, it's not a waste of the torches. You're kind of buying performance. You're buying the ability for your world not to cause huge issues, and that's an important thing to do. Can't legally say why I need to do it right now, besides that I want my world to be very well lit up, and that very unrelated separate point, I would like to release this on the marketplace, but that is not linked to the fact that I'm lighting it up right now. There we go. I think we nailed that again. So yeah, I basically, I wanted to triple down my stance, and I also wanted to say, I was thinking about it a lot this week, and this is one of the, again, very not unethical, but like kind of interesting stances, because I was thinking like, one day I'm gonna have a child, and I'm gonna realize like maybe this is or isn't a hobby. Like that's gonna be the real decider for me. Like okay, there's kind of like a stated thing, whether it's true or not, I don't know, that when you become a parent, whether father or mother, you kind of change a lot, both because your lifestyle changes because of your new, very time-intensive hobby, but also because, like, oh yeah, when you see a child, you have to look after it, you want to be more responsible, you want to be all these sorts of things, and so I was thinking a lot about children recently this past week, and I was thinking, you know what? If I had children, I would love to have identical twins. Or, I think 2 children in general. If you have to go for a second round, then that's fine, Some people do hobbies more intensively than others. And I was thinking, like, having an only child is probably more work than having 2, right? Because that child is going to be like, you're basically that child's entertainment. This is something parents have always said to me, and I've been like, that's a lie. But I thought back to my own childhood. I had an older brother, if you don't know. And yeah, actually, having a brother there, we interact with each other all the time. Either I'd interact with my parents and bother them and get in the way of their stuff, or, I wouldn't interact at all. And therefore, you have 2 children, they deal with each other, easy. But also, here's what I would love about having 2 children. You could split them up. I would have, I don't know, let's say my parents raise one and me raise the other, half the time. Or maybe, let's be honest, most marriages end in divorce. Let's just plan that divorce from the get-go. Have a child, 2 years after, have a divorce going on. And then you and, your former partner, this is half of your DNA mixed, right? So there's no, oh yeah, this is rough DNA. You've both got 2 children made from the same batch of, cookie dough or whatever. And wouldn't it be kind of fun to see, who can raise children better? It's, because right now, if you, there's kind of a competition that all parents have with each other. They never like to say it because it's, the most terrible thing to be competitive about. But, there's kind of a competition with parents. When you see someone who's bad at parenting, you're like, yeah, look at me, I'm good at this. You're not bad parents. I'm assuming. I don't know for sure, I'm not a parent. But wouldn't it be kind of fun if you could have an actual competition? Because again, I've always liked speed runs and stuff like that with clearly set rules, because it's really easy to make your own category and win that. Oh, I'm the best at raising this child named Charlie that happens to be the most passive thing in the world and accepts everything I do to it. But you know what would be way more fun? 2 children, same. Why is there ice there? 2 children, exactly the same. Genes, mix, etc. Who can raise the child better, one parent or the other one? That'd be a fun little scientific experiment that you could conduct right there. And I think it's I think this comes under the same realm that I've discussed many times before, of horrifically unethical. But it happens all the time anyway, right? Is it unethical if it happens all the time? I would love if we could do more experiments on people. Obviously, I would hate to be one of the people, which is why we don't do experiments on people. But I think science can achieve a lot for a lot of people. And wouldn't it be cool if we could see I wonder who would be better, the single father from the same child or the single mother? Split up the children, make sure they're pretty identical otherwise. Split the money, that's kind of what alimony or whatever they call it in the UK actually does for you. You kind of split the finances, make it so both can raise a child adequately. Who is better at raising that child? Let's work it out. That would be a fun thing to me. And I feel like if I didn't lose the everyone who is a parent in some way from my having children as a hobby statement, there we go. I've doubled down on something else, and now I've probably lost you in that way. But no, yeah, I think honestly there are very few things having a job. The only reason it's not a hobby is because you get paid, right? And you can argue there are some things that are chores, and then there are hobbies, right? Everything in your life can be defined, I would argue, as either a job, a chore, or a hobby. Job is something you get paid for, generally speaking. Sometimes you get paid in emotional fulfillment if you don't need money and you want to do something kind of non-profit, or maybe you do need money, but you do something non-profit and it all works out anyway, then yeah, you can get emotional fulfillment. It's a thing, you know, like, there is a human desire to work for 90% of the population. A lot of people don't think that that's the case, but I mean, it's based on everyone I've ever spoken to or met or whatever, that seems to be true for me. But yeah, let's fly it back up, by the way. Let's just give this one more check, make sure we're all good here. And then also we'll place like a lantern on the top here, just to make sure that even up top we're good. Just a nice little lantern to remind people what's inside. So let's just do one last run through here and check, because I think we've now lit up the area, which would mean that we're a step closer to having the world actually be, you know, available to do things with. Not that that's linked in any way. Oh, see, look at this. There's tiny little areas like this we have to be very careful with. Just make sure everything's lit up, because having one area not lit up is almost as bad as having 100 areas not lit up if they're really close together. That's a counterintuitive but true fact about this sort of thing, which is why we're going to try and make it at least look like everything is lit up. So yeah, while we do this, I'll kind of pivot onto something else which has been kind of going on, maybe is the word, for this past week. By the way, if you're using torches, you should be more efficient than this. I'm just having fun and goofing off and making it look like it's more torched than it actually is, which is always a good idea. Particularly when there is maybe some review involved on this sort of thing. But basically, one of the things that I've also been, I guess, thinking about this past week, it's really irrational, and that's why it's dug into my head so much. So there's a very large town in the UK that's somewhat near me. You know, it's to the north of London. Maybe you've heard of it. You know, if I say there's a town with a rough reputation to the north of London, you know which one I'm talking about, probably, if you're in the area. And it's well known everywhere as just being a terrible place to live. It's also, interestingly, the home of a lot of, like, it's one of the few areas with like a ethnic, like, it's one of the most diverse areas, and it's like one of the very few places where British isn't the majority thing in the UK, which is, again, so it's one of those unique places. I'm mentioning that because there's only 2 places like that, and unlike in the US, where it's really, really common in certain states, there are, I want to say, just 2 localities in the UK where that is true. So there's this area that is really known for being you know, low income, as well as high crime, as well as, like, weirdly diverse. All, you know, all those things mixed together. And you know, the reason I bring that up is because I was there recently, and I was like, man, this place is so cheap to live for somewhere that's close to London. Like, if you live, you know, like 20 minutes, you know, yeah, let's say like you live 20 minutes from the center of London, but you live in the London boundaries. You know, you pay some absurd number of hundreds of thousands to get the tiniest flat. If you live 20 minutes from London, but outside London in this town where everything is terrible and the crime rate is absurdly high, then, you know, it costs literally a fifth of the price, if not less. You know, you can buy a house for the same price as well. It's crazy cheap to live there, and it's also really convenient for all the things I want. And I consider myself, you know, like, high crime, what does that even really mean? Because right now, you know, I live in a high crime area, technically speaking. Every time I get leaflets from my door from the police being like, hey, there was this many burglaries in your area last week. And I look on crime maps, and I live in this, like, big red area of where I live. There's a lot of crime where I'm at, is what I'm saying. So it's like, you know, if I already live in a high crime area and I don't even get crimed on at all, then why not just switch to an area that's also high crime but is cheaper? By the way, I think we're done here now. I mean, there are some top areas that aren't lit, but the only thing you need to light, a thing a lot of people make the mistake of doing is lighting up there. Always light the ground, because that's the only place 99% of mobs can spawn. Maybe mobs in the future will break that rule, but right now, light the ground. That's the only place you need to really care about. So yeah, one of the things that is interesting is that, like, oh yeah, so technically speaking, there's high crime right now, but a lot of people take that, especially people who have always lived in suburbs of, you know, people who have lived in safe, quote-unquote, areas all the time are like, oh god, that's, you know, like, it's so dangerous there. I'm glad I pay these hundreds of thousands extra to live in an area where that's not possible. But the real truth of, again, you know, crime, for the most part, again, especially violent crime, is most people don't commit violent crime against strangers. There are some areas with a lot of muggings, and I'd say that's something you want to avoid, generally speaking, right? That just doesn't seem very good or fun. But most violent crime is, you know, gang on gang, or it's like people on their friends and enemies, not upon strangers. So, you know, even though you live in a high crime area, as long as you don't know those people personally and they don't hate you, because if they like you, they're probably going to be fine with you, right? But yeah, then you're probably mostly fine. There's a really common, because again, I watch a lot of US media just because it's, you know, the internet's media is US media, for better or for worse, right? So I watch a lot of, you know, media that comes from the US, and one of the things that I always find striking about that is that there's always this kind of huge trend of, oh yeah, in Europe, in X and Y city, there's a no-go area, and whether people believe it or not just comes down to whether they think it sounds right. There's no way to verify whether a suburb of Sweden or a suburb of London is actually a no-go area, and it sounds like a thing, and if it justifies your beliefs, people, oh god, people believe it. I think I wanted to go to the Never, not the End, by the way. I think I made a big mistake coming. In case you haven't seen it though yet, here is my end. It's covered in 55,000 blocks of glass. People are enjoying that video recently, and that's one of the things that's led to the channel doing so well. I think a lot of people don't realize about when a channel starts exploding, especially in terms of like subscribers, views, etc. Like, right now on the Toycat channel, things are going very well. I'm very appreciative. It's one of the better things that's been happening in my life as a whole, I would say. But yeah, one of the interesting things that's been happening over this time is it's because older videos like the glass end video have been showing up everywhere. And I get a lot of questions saying like, is this legit? And you would hope this is legit, right? After all of this, if not, then I'm playing because people who play half survival, half creative, they're cheating themselves. They're being, again, I've said that before. I'm a big believer in like, if you don't stay in survival the whole time, why go into survival at all unless you want to trick your friends or unless you want to believe, like it's all down to just tricking yourself or tricking your friends. It's trickery, It's something I'm not a big fan of. So yeah, everything's in survival here. That's why a lot of it's so rough. That's why a lot of it's built with basic ingredients, because that's the way that we do these things. So yeah, we're gonna head over to our Iceberg biome now. Because I basically hinted it early in the video, but the reason I've been working so much on survival is because I have two big projects like that I'm working on right now, two big survival projects, and I'm working on them simultaneously because one's a big building project, one's a big destruction project, or at least it's in the destruction phase, and sometimes I'm in a destructive mood. I'm in a destructive mood right now, and this is my Let's Play. I can do what I want. I can talk over destruction for a while if I want to, so let's destroy some of the Iceberg biome with my nice Silk Touch pickaxe, which by the way, as a 1.12, now works much better. It's really cool in that way. And let me just kind of finish my point here that yeah, so a lot of people will just blindly believe the concept of a no-go zone because it fits in their kind of thing. I've walked around the majority of the first 3 zones of London, I would say. If you don't know, London's split into zones, but it's mostly for travel, but people use it to kind of define how central an area is. Like zone 1 is the most central, zone 2 is less central than that. Most of the areas that have problems are usually in the further usually considered in the like mid zones. Like the furthest out zones are the suburbs, kind of like, oh yeah, these are also rich areas. The middle areas are also very rich because you live right in the center. And then there's like a area between those ones where it's like, oh yeah, this is the cheapest place you can live. That's kind of central. And yeah, so I walk around the vast majority of it, and it's safe. Funny enough, I can go through there, and you see police there too. It's the place that's like most famous in London for being bad. My brother lives there. I walk there multiple times a year. The scariest thing I saw was like a fox at one point, and I was like, wait, do foxes hurt people, or is that just, like movies? That's the scariest thing I've ever been through in that particular area, despite the fact that, it's Tower Hamlets, in case you're curious. But, despite all of these, like, famous, the fact that it's famous for all sorts of like, all these sorts of things, it's actually pretty fine to go to because that's not actually a thing. It's a thing that's really easy to claim because it's impossible to ascertain. It's like if I said, oh yeah, all American people have a bag they keep somewhere on their person at all time that has at least 5 bullets because you never know when they're going to be involved in a gunfight. And it'd be really easy for any Europeans to be like, yep, I do know Americans have guns all the time and they've got like, shooting problems and therefore they all carry around bullets on them. And it's like, well, I mean, you could speak to some or rather, I would be like, oh yeah, there are some areas where that happens. And it'd be like, it's impossible to disprove an area, especially when you don't clarify which particular area. Like, name a suburb in, London that is a no-go zone, and I'll go there and I'll prove that it's not. I think I even recorded a video. I don't know if it ever went up on the second channel, but at one point, I think it was like New Year's Eve, as I was going through that, and I was like, look, this area is considered really bad, and it's right next to this really nice area because that's how big cities work. There's a lot of everyone lives very close to everyone else. That's the cities are just like countries but on like a smaller scale. It's very interesting to me. Okay, so I wanted to get that one off my chest and just kind of say, so the reason that all of this has come up, it's on my chest because it's always on my chest when people misunderstand crime all the time. People misunderstand dangerous areas all the time. There are a lot of places that I would say I am scared of because they are dangerous in the world, but most of them are not in Western developed nations because you don't need to commit crime against strangers to live here. And even if, honestly, even then, even the crimes people commit against strangers, it's usually not kidnapping, except in some rare countries and circumstances. It's usually not kidnapping, it's usually not murder. It's, murder is not a profitable crime to commit against strangers. Fun fact. There's like, even if you were in a country, even if you were desperate, would you murder strangers? You would not. Why would you not murder strangers? Because what's the benefit, you know? Mugging is the most common thing to occur. And then if you think about it, I was doing like the terrible calculation. So if you knew that you might be mugged at any time, which, you know, maybe that fear is enough for some people, then let's say you carry around a max of like $200, pounds, Canadian, whatever in your wallet at any time. So that way, if someone wants to mug you, you just give it straight to them. And maybe you don't carry around your driver's license, or you put it somewhere separate. Like, have just a cache of money to give to someone, which is, you know, like, you lose money when you're mugged, it sucks. But the cost of being mugged, even if you got mugged 5 times a month, or like 5 times a year, let's say, is a better example, that's like, you know, and you give them 200 each time, that's 1,000 a year, sure. But given that it's hundreds of thousands to live in a lower crime area, it actually costs you more to avoid crime than to just accept it. Which, again, there's a lot of reasons why that's not good logic, and why eventually I will probably not live in an area like this. But yeah, the reason that I mentioned all of this, I've been sidetracked so many times here, but this is the Let's Play. What are you going to do? You're going to stop me getting sidetracked? You're not going to be able to do that. Get out of here. But yeah, so one of the things that has been on my mind is that I looked at my area, which, like I said, is usually bright red on all the heat maps of like crime and stuff, because there's a lot of burglaries, there's a lot of all of the crimes, really, like all the categories you can measure. There's just it all happens here apparently, and so because of that, I look at the heat map, and there's been nothing on my street in the past year. Literally every street around mine, I live, you know, like, there's a lot of people nearby me. Every street around me has had some decent number of things happen in the last 6 months, but there hasn't been one to me, which you would figure like, oh yeah, things are getting better. There's a lot of houses being bought and sold every single month on my street. So, you know, clearly what you can assume from that is like, oh yeah, the area's going better. That's not what I assume, you know, maybe this is me being a strange person, maybe this is logic, but it feels like we're overdue. Like, I know the area isn't much safer than the surrounding ones, like, there's no way my one street is just magically safe and all the other ones aren't. So the way I take that is like, oh, so we're overdue some form of big crime, you know, I would rather not be crimed on in some way. I would rather not be stolen from, and yeah, tell me how you think about that, strangers on the internet. Do you think that I'm overdue, or do you think that like, oh yeah, maybe things are just all right, and things are bad everywhere around you? All of those other neighborhoods, they suck, but you know what doesn't suck? Where you live right now. Because that is one conclusion I can take. I just think it's also a super naive conclusion, but also if it makes me feel happy, maybe I should believe it anyway. I mean, let me know what your thoughts are about that particular thing, because it's, again, it's on my mind a lot. There's a lot of things that are on my mind a lot, like, you know, maybe I should say fewer things that are mildly offensive. But again, my whole point has always been like, let's just talk honestly. You know, when we realize something is up, we can always fix and correct or whatever. But I think it's important just to like talk about how things really are, because that's the cool thing about YouTube, is that you can use it as an honesty platform, and because you can trust that there's some amount of honesty. You know, a lot of people don't use it as a platform for honesty, but like, yeah, this is real, this is what's happening. This, rather than making fake drama, this or that, and all of these sorts of things, I love that YouTube's just platform. You'd be like, yeah, none of that. Instead, what we're just gonna do is we're just gonna talk about whatever, you know, like things are, because real concerns are often not easy to talk about. And now you know, my real concern is crime overdue or not? And my real concern is like, who would raise a child better, me or my divorced partner? And now you know. Which one of those things is going down? Anyway, with that said, I feel like this Let's Play went into some really strange places, but hopefully you now know how to fix some lag issues in your world. Generally speaking, don't leave dark places in your world, and then even if you cover them up, you might think, oh, if I covered it up, it's gone. But yeah, with most things, trying to cover them up, trying to hide the truth, even if it's just hiding the truth from yourself, is usually not the best solution. I think, you know, having some amount of, like, just, some amount of, you know, like, just easy, you know, like, not hiding the truth, some amount of transparency, some amount of just being like, okay, there's a thing there, let's fix it, it's gonna be fine. Because covering things up is only a temporary solution, which is why I put things under my bed when I'm trying to make my room look nice for, you know, like, temporarily. But if you want things to look nice overall, you gotta, like, move them from under your bed to somewhere that is actually clean. There you go. Pro tips with Toy Cat: how to clean your room, how to fix your Minecraft, how to fix your Minecraft world, and also how to, you know, not feel terrified if you go somewhere with a high crime rate. Because you know what? You're not being crimed against by strangers for anything but your money. And how much money do you really have on you at any time? Or how much money do you really have, I guess, period, at any time? There you go. Fun fact. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed seeing me destroy some icebergs and fix a world. If you're curious about how to download this map, entirely unrelated to the contents of this video, I did not optimize this world for the sake of any marketplace, related restrictions or things. So one of the things that you might want to know is, like, when is this happening? And honestly, things move at a very strange pace. With regards to this, sometimes it looks like it's happening like really, really soon. Sometimes it's like a month away. There's a lot of bureaucracy waves we've got to go through, and then there's like a delay between when it's done with all of those and when it can go up. It's a whole thing that is probably there for good reasons, and therefore I'll just say, hopefully, my goal, the deadline I've mentally set myself, is the end of August latest. Like, I want to have it done by the summer, right? Like, if you want to explore this world, that'll be a thing. And yeah, also after that comes out, we'll be able to update it. And there's a lot of things I want to do that make this map different to anything that's ever been released. I believe I asked, and I haven't got a response yet. I believe this is the first survival-built, survival-only map on the marketplace when it goes up there. So that'll be a fun little thing. So yeah, I'm looking forward to releasing it in the next few weeks and maybe month. And I hope you look forward to playing it. And if you don't, then I hope you enjoyed this video regardless. Hope you learned something. Hope you have some thoughts. Or maybe you don't have any of those things. And you're just here like, man, so I can't. I am tired. And if you're tired, then you should take a nap. Which maybe I'm going to do that now, actually. So thank you very much for watching. I'll see you all next time. Goodbye. These lanterns are so tiny in your hand.